Welcome to Quah Order. I'm one of your hosts, Tim Smith.
And I'm Corporal Ryan Smith, Issaquah Police Department. Thanks for coming.
And joining us today is Chase Goddard, one of our traffic officers. We thought today we'd talk about policing traffic in Issaquah. So,
Fun.
So welcome to the podcast,
Thank
Chase.
you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
So first off, before we get into the details of traffic, let's talk about how long you've been with the IPD and where did you come from before? Just a little background about you.
So January will be 5 years with Issaquah PD, and I am a lateral officer from Georgia. Started with a sheriff's office in Georgia in 2007.
Oh,
And,
wow.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was it like policing in Georgia? So where in Georgia?
Just northeast of Atlanta.
Okay.
Started with the Rockdale County Sheriff's Office, which is I-20 due east of Atlanta.
Okay.
Yep.
What brought you up to the Issaquah way?
My wife and I came here for vacation and liked it. Went home and decided we'd rather live here. Saved up for a year and a half and moved.
Nice.
And here we are.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Happy with the move?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, beautiful place and a lot of really good people and completely different environment for policing as well. A lot more of the community policing versus just call to call to call.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's really a good change. And it's really been a good second half of the career so far. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Issaquah PD is happy to have you, so I'm glad you came.
you're just saying that.
Of course I am. I'm still glad you came.
You know, Brian's a nice guy.
Yes, I am. I try to be. So how long have you been in the traffic position for Issaquah?
So I was moved to traffic October of last year, 2018.
Okay.
So we had one officer assigned to traffic who was a motor, and that officer came out of motor position to go, John Linder to go in to be our school resource officer, and then Matt Fulbright took the motor position, and the city opened up 2 additional traffic positions, filling only one of them so far with me. So I do traffic in a vehicle in one of the black and white Tahoes, and then my partner Matt Fulbright does it on the motor still. So there's 2 of us assigned to traffic.
Nice. That's really nice. Big difference then from previous years. Before you came in, of only having one, so that makes a big difference, I'm guessing.
It is, and then the tasks that we're kind of taking over, because it is 2 of us and not just one, is handling the collisions, parking problems, a lot of stuff that Officer Linder just couldn't really do all by himself, being the sole person, and trying to take some of those responsibilities and time, sometimes time-consuming things from patrol, so that they're free to do other responsibilities as well.
Excellent. That sounds really good.
How often is our traffic officers out patrolling? Is that a 24-hour-a-day thing, or is there specific times? Is it more commuter type stuff, or?
Currently, with the 2 of us, we are kind of sharing like more of a commuter, before commuting hours to after commuting hours, occasional evenings, occasional weekends, just to have enforcement at different times and not just be Monday, 8 to 5, that we're out, and before and after that, that we're not. So we do change it up a little bit. We do work some weekend shifts as well, so there is a presence as well, in addition to patrol working traffic amongst their other duties. But yeah, we are both assigned to 4 10-hour shifts instead of the patrol working 12-hour shifts.
Oh, okay. When you're out there, what is like the main focus for Issaquah Police when it comes to traffic?
It depends on the time of day. We have a lot of, so for Escalation Middle as well as high school in the morning morning in and out traffic, as well as afternoon traffic getting in and out, because 2nd Avenue and Sunset is such a bottleneck and thoroughfare at the same time. So trying to keep that calm, so kind of calming that area, the community center, trying to keep some of the parking lots from being used as a cut through and just being a presence. We kind of shift to some of the bus stops for some of the younger kids after that. Middle of the day, it's kind of everywhere. Speeding, blocking, intersections, cell phone use, traffic control devices, making sure people are stopping in intersections, not making left-hand, right-hand turns where they shouldn't, general speed. So yeah, it's just kind of a variety, and then the evening you're kind of shifting back into just where we recognize where traffic is moving, and then monitor those areas in the directions it's moving to make sure that it's calmer, hopefully, is the goal. So.
To follow up with that, how do you get traffic complaints or a way that you get things from other people in the PD that you can address as well if a citizen or a resident wants to, they have a concern in their neighborhood or certain areas?
Occasionally people do just call in directly, but what we do receive, not as frequently as we were, which is good, and it seems to be a good sign for us, but the City of Issaquah has a report a concern function, so you can go to the City of Issaquah website and select multiple issues, like if you have something more of like an engineering problem or a roadway problem or pothole, you can report that. But at the same time, if there is a like a nuisance noise or an intersection you don't believe is working efficiently that needs to be addressed by engineering, or just a general speed concern, it can get routed by selecting the appropriate issue code or issue line, and it comes to us as well. So Officer Fulbright and I do address parking, reckless driving, speeding, as amongst other traffic-related issues. But yeah, so just online's kind of nice. So we do monitor those and start calls for them and respond appropriately as those come in. So
Excellent.
yeah,
So here's a big question for all the citizens. Where do you hide all the time?
everywhere, everywhere. And, most of my traffic enforcement, honestly, is in moving. I do very little stationary. For one thing, because I'm still currently in a fully marked black and white Tahoe, which is a gigantic vehicle and not really good to hide. But at the same time, that's not really the goal, is to catch people. And people also do kind of learn different areas, and so it's not an efficient way to police, and it's not the goal to just write 20 speeding tickets on one roadway every day. So it's general movement, and then doing so, I'm checking speed, because in addition to this piece of equipment, the lidar, all of our vehicles have radar in them as well, which can get vehicles coming and going both directions in front of or behind me. And so as you drive around, you're constantly working the moving stationary radar while you're moving in roadways, watching for vehicle movement, lane usage. Come to an intersection, watch for traffic control device violations, cell phone usage, tab, enforcement, and that's the type of, you can't get those and see those violations if you're just stopped in a dark spot on the side of the road.
So you were talking about radar. So all the cars have radar just always on, or do you have to activate it?
It is activated.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a module. There's two sensors. There's a sensor just inside the front windshield. There's a sensor just inside the back windshield.
Oh, okay.
And if those officers are choosing to operate it, then there's a control on the console that has different modes: stationary mode, moving mode, front antenna, rear antenna. And so you have the option of which direction, moving, stationary, coming and going. What do you want to do? In multiple lanes as well.
Okay.
So it's pretty in-depth. I'd almost have to show you to really grasp it. But it's pretty, especially in our newer cars, it's a very high-end piece of equipment. It's probably one of the best because you can use it on multi-lane, very specific in what's coming and going to you. The downside to that is it is get more difficult when you're working a multi-lane road if there's a lot of traffic. It's harder to identify where the violator would be. That's where the lidar, being a laser, is handy instead, because it actually has a specific sight that you put on the vehicle itself. So you recognize a vehicle is going above whatever the speed limit, and we get really good. We have to be accurate within 5 miles an hour through the certification of doing this, is learning this vehicle is going too fast. It appears to be going too fast. We then confirm it with the equipment.
Oh, okay.
But this piece of equipment has a sight confirmed. It's a laser. It's very, very accurate, and so that's why this is good. But you have to be stationary to use it.
Okay. Yeah. So what's the reason for a lidar versus a radar gun, or using the radar in the car?
So the radar in the car is good, but you're typically identifying violations 300, 400, 500 feet maybe away from you. Where this one on long stretches, you're 1,400, 1,700 feet away.
Wow.
So it depends on the roadway. Is it flat, level? Can you see? How far can you see? And is it an area where you have the ability, like 17th or East Lake or somewhere in the Highlands, you have a longer stretch. The other really good thing about this is too, radar will be affected by power lines. So sometimes you may come into an area where radar, you will get a false reading on your radar equipment because of just the way the power lines function and that interference, and you can't use radar. And so switching to a piece of equipment like a lidar, it's not affected. So it's just another tool, and different ways to use them.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the more common traffic offenses that you may see? And then I guess the traffic offenses that you may see that people might not realize that they're doing.
So sometimes people will, a common one is making a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn, not turning into the immediate lane closest to the curbing. That is a requirement. So if they're making a right-hand turn and someone has a green light, they're almost meeting in that left-hand lane, not realizing they have to take that immediate lane, and then when safe to change lanes to the right or to the left afterwards. That one's a pretty common one, especially doing all the collision investigation that we do. Having to explain that to people doesn't seem to be something that was understood prior. Not blocking blocking intersections, pulling into an intersection where you have a green light or a yellow light, stopping in the intersection, having it cycling to red, and then maybe at some point thereafter being able to clear the intersection, you're blocking the intersection. And so that's a big issue that we have front in Sunset, front in Gilman, a lot of big intersections, even 17th and Gilman on the west end, where they pull into the intersection. And then with light cycles, you're blocking the opposing traffic. And it just turns into a downhill cycle of no one is able to go for those lights. Turns into people being frustrated, sometimes some horns, sometimes road rage. So that's a big one for us just because of the movement of traffic. And people are in a hurry, and everyone's in a hurry, and then they get upset when they can't go when they have a green light. So that's a big one. As well as cell phone, we really are seeing still a lot of cell phone use. Can't physically have the device in your hand at all. 2 years ago, it changed from being you can't text. Now it can't be in your hand. Can't be in your hand, in front of you, speakerphone, to your head, to your ear. Another really good one that's similar is you can't have any kind of headphones in it of any kind. So headphones like big bulky ones like these, little earbuds, iPhones, can't have anything in your ear that has the ability by definition to broadcast the radio, which is pretty much everything. So you see lots and lots of people with those in their ears, and when fire, EMS, AMR, us are trying to move through traffic to get to an emergency, and people are not hearing that, then that's definitely a problem. So that's something we're still seeing quite a bit of, and people are just not aware it's not allowed.
So will you elaborate on, so when you talk about blocking an intersection, what about, can you elaborate a little bit on the idea of, what about the left turn? If you have a signal, you can take a left, people will pull in the intersection, then they wait in the middle of the intersection, then they turn left when it's opening. Can you talk about that and what the actual law says? Because a lot of people get stuck, different type. They might not be going straight, they turn left, but they still get stuck, or the light turns red, they're in the middle of the intersection, then they turn left. And then so can you talk about that a little bit, about what the law says?
So the law is for roadway, crosswalks, sidewalks, or railroad crossings. You can't enter onto that area where marked unless you have the ability to clear it and make it through the intersection. So if you come up to an intersection, left-hand turn lane, there's a white stop line, or some intersections may be worn down, but you can imagine where that stop line would be, where it would be appropriate, where a crosswalk and your sidewalk is going to be connecting to. You can't pass that until you have the ability to clear whatever intersection, sidewalk, crosswalk, railroad crossing, until you can clear it, because that's what happens, whether it be a train and they're coming through and they're not going to stop for you, or it's just you're blocking the traffic and it's a slow speed and it's not really dangerous, but it's becoming more of a nuisance and a hassle and something that frustrates people. But yeah, so entering in, even if you're entering the intersection with a green light or a yellow light and you feel like that should be legal, if you can't make it through that intersection and you have to stay in it because there's no room for you to move to on the far side of it and you end up stopping in the middle of it, we all know that it feels awkward and you get caught in that spot, but that's the issue, that it's purposeful. It's every light cycle. In a lot of areas where it is, you have everyone coming off of I-90 and Front Street and, Front Street at Sunset, and people, especially southbound, it's every light cycle, one or two cars blocking the intersection, and then your east-west or opposing traffic can't go. And it just turns into a cycle of everyone blocking the intersection.
And thank you. It's just something I think we all see, right? That left turn, the straight, but also the left turn, something that I know all of us, from people that live here and also work here, and other cops see it all the time. So just a little clarification on that. I think it's good. So
and, that kind of thing makes me think about crosswalks, because it can be kind of vague. So if you have you have 4 lanes, right? A 4-lane roadway, and you're a car approaching and someone is in the far right, you're on the far left, and they've entered. Can you go through that crosswalk if you're 3 lanes apart? I guess, what's the rules on that?
So once that person enters into the roadway, they do have right of way within the crosswalk to continue across safely. So you do need to stop.
Right.
Yeah.
So that doesn't matter how many lanes. Doesn't matter how many lanes of road.
No. And ours, our widest is 4 lanes. And and that would be, then probably in like Northwest Gilman, we have one. And a lot of those wider ones, they'll put a light in with it as well. But even if it's like 2 lanes with a center turn lane or a 4-lane road, if they're in the crosswalk, they have right of way within that crosswalk, you have to stop. Even that's what you see people do. If they're, they're in the far left-hand lane, they're like, oh, I've got 2 lanes between us, so I'm going to go ahead and skirt through. And it's still not allowed, even if it's not close. It's still not allowed for safety. There's reasons for it, so.
Okay. Now, from the citizen's point of view, so we have a lot of those lighted crosswalks.
Yes.
So, so a car is maybe a car length or 2 away from the crosswalk. A citizen walks up, hits that light. They immediately think they're safe.
Yeah,
you know,
you still
'cause
have a responsibility as a pedestrian to make sure the roadway is safe. So you do have authority once once you're stepping into the roadway as a pedestrian, you have authority and the ability and for them to have to yield to you. But we do also, I mean, it's kind of hanging your own neck out there a little bit. At that point, you still have to make sure that you're safe. You can't just come up if you use the button, hit the button, and walk in. You still have to make sure no one's coming.
Right.
But legally speaking, once they do enter the roadway, and it is sometimes splitting hairs if you have a vehicle coming and they're 25 miles an hour and 25 and they're one vehicle length and someone just hits the button, steps off the curb. We have to make a decision if something occurs in that event or if we witness something. So it's not quite black and white, easy to say, oh yeah, if they hit the button and they step on the roadway, they have right of way. There's more of a totality of the circumstances if we're investigating whatever it would be or if there was an issue. But yeah, once they do step into the roadway, you do have to yield to them. But there is a reasonableness if a vehicle's traveling at speed and you step out in front of it, that vehicle's not going to be able to stop for you.
Right.
So,
Right.
just a little bit of
Yeah.
just
I
you
know-
just have to use that safe
I know
judgment.
earlier, just recently, there was a huge traffic incident on East Lake. Did you come to that?
East Lake and 43rd.
East Lake and 43rd?
Yeah, the dump truck.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Can you talk about that at all?
So dump truck, relatively normal size load of gravel coming down the hill, lost all their brakes, all their air brakes, which affects the parking
Wow.
brakes as well. Realized it at the top of the hill, coming southwestbound on 43rd towards East Lake, and did everything it could, shifting through the gears to slow it. Wasn't able to stop. Thankfully, traffic was light. There was no one ahead of him going westbound. And as soon as, right before he approached the intersection, a gentleman was going northbound on East Lake, saw the truck at the last minute, sped up a slight bit. The truck driver was able to barely just graze the passenger car, push them into the center of the roundabout, into the grass and planted area.
Wow.
And tried to navigate the turn, saw a pole, purposely drove towards the pole, hoping it would stop him because he just had no other options. And yeah, it turned into quite a big. He's lost all of his diesel. It took out a power pole, live wires. Fire department was concerned of fire, and ended up tearing the whole front suspension out from under the dump truck.
Wow.
It was quite an event, but all things considered, from that big I think a 56,000 pound truck with no load, and the fact that he was able to get it to stop with no one being hurt, it was pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
yeah, it was a big collision.
Yeah, yeah. You see a lot of traffic accidents and stuff like that, or as part of your job, right?
Yeah,
You
so
know?
we if we're on duty, we do try to take the both collisions and parking problems and anything traffic related, traffic hazards, broken down vehicles, reckless driving, impaired driving calls. Anytime it's motor vehicle movement, roadway related, we do try to take those calls best we can. Patrol does still take them if we're not on or if we're busy or tied up doing anything else, because sometimes it's hard to just get to everything. But yeah, that's our primary concern and primary goal is to take those responsibilities away to just alleviate that, so patrol has other time to focus on other issues.
So,
That's good.
here, let me just. So, as a citizen who's been pulled over, what?
How many times?
Only a couple.
Okay.
Only a couple. And my story was really good because I didn't get a ticket. I got a warning. I didn't get a ticket.
Okay.
So that kind of rolls into my question. So you pull somebody over. What is the funniest, silliest, most ridiculous, or just like, story or excuse that you get? Or typically how does people react when you pull them over? Are they angry or do you just get the gambit? Do you just get the gambit?
Occasional angry, but honestly, for the most part, and I think it kind of speaks to the community and some of the surrounding community, most people just say okay, or I didn't realize it. A lot of people thank me, and it sounds ironic, but a lot do. I occasionally have someone, I have to use the restroom, or my kid's screaming, I'm just trying to get home, or whatever it would be. Or if it is something like headphones or cell phone or blocking, something I didn't realize I was not allowed to do this. But I do feel like most people do either say, hey, it was an honest mistake, I didn't realize it, or just simply apologize. If it's traffic on 17th and they've been stuck behind a slow truck on 900 all the way from Renton, they finally get a chance to hit 17th and they wind it up into the 60s and it's a 40-mile-an-hour zone and they're just like, hey, I've been behind this truck for like 7 miles. I'm sorry. I'm just done with it. And you do get just a lot of, I think probably 80-90% is just honest, like, I'm sorry. You got it. So
Okay.
Yeah.
I always thought that, so this was going to be my excuse. I was wondering if it would work. So I got pulled over once and I did get a ticket. I was trying to catch a ferry up in Anacortes and I was late. So, and there's this hill and they get you every time. right? And so I was like, well, what if I jump out and say there was a bee in my car?
I would say it's not a good idea. Don't jump out of the car.
Well, I pulled
when you're on a
over. I
traffic
pulled
stop.
over and I was going to say, okay, everybody jump out of the car and say there's a bee. I didn't. Would that work?
I would highly.
Run around
That's a
crazy
tough
like
one.
there's a bee?
I would say the best thing
It's
for
like,
anyone to do is stay in your vehicle and
Okay.
wait for the officer to approach. So
Well, I
please do
didn't
not
do
take
it.
do not take Tim
You said
Smith's advice on that one.
Said
I-
everybody. I don't hear a lot of good role models. And stuff
Okay.
being set right.
Okay. Well, everybody.
Children
it was
out
like
the
me and
car.
my wife.
Oh,
I didn't do it. I just thought I just tried to get creative. It didn't happen.
it just depends. I guess if you make them laugh, they may say, "All right, just get
You
at
never
it."
know.
But
That would have been the idea. I'd just be dancing on the side of the road. I don't know. I might have probably taken it for other observation or something.
get involved from a traffic stop.
Yeah,
It's
probably
happened
not the
before.
best thing.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
happened before.
Yeah.
Mhm. How often does that happen? An escalation from a typical traffic stop?
It depends on the community. In this community, not nearly as often. On the East Coast in Georgia, about 1 every 10 traffic stops. If you were really doing traffic, typically about 1 out of every 10 contacts, someone was going to be taken into custody for one thing or another, whether it's license or a warrant or narcotics or something criminal related. Not just in this state, it's civil. In Georgia, everything's criminal. There's no civil infraction and criminal infraction
Oh, okay.
difference. Here, speeding, seatbelt, traffic control device is all a civil infraction where it's nothing you would go to jail for. You're not giving a court date. You're given 15 days to respond to court. Or criminal offenses like DUI, reckless driving, suspended license, first, second, or third degree. They're criminal offenses, and you're actually given a court date and or taken into custody depending on the circumstances.
Oh, okay.
DUI, I think I should have said that one too. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it just depends on the circumstances. And in this state, not nearly as many events that come from traffic, but it also depends. I mean, a lot of what we do is daytime thoroughfare commuter traffic. If you're making traffic stops at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning versus 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you're going to have a completely different person possibly that you're contacting. So, and that changes a lot of what we are doing day to day versus what it can be. Because traffic stops are one of the more dangerous things you can do, because if it's someone from some other state or some other place in the state, you have no idea who that person is.
Yeah, a lot of unknown factors.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how long are you going to be a traffic officer for Issaquah Police? Is that cyclical, or is it by choice, or?
I think it does. It is subjective a little bit, but the rule of thumb, I believe, from my position is a 3-year, where our motor position is 7.
Okay.
There's more training just specific to the motorcycle itself as to why that's a longer duration. But I think some of that is subjective into how many people within the department are interested in it. If there's 3 positions, you have 3 people in it. One person wants to come out and nobody wants to go in, and they may not move anyone if there's no one that wants to move into it. I think that's kind of really based around just being fair so that people have an opportunity to participate in the position. But if no one is interested, then it just depends on when that time comes around. But yeah, typically it's 3 years with an option to extend to 4, I believe, if we like it. So for me, it'd be another almost 3 years, which it's good. So they do kind of make it a little bit longer, just because there's a lot of specific training for collision investigation, advanced roadside impaired driving enforcement, which is A-RIDE. And A-RIDE's kind of the intermediate between normal as well as DRE, which is you're going to be DUIs. A lot of DREs or state patrol where they're drug recognition experts, and they're able to look at signs and symptoms of drivers and say, it's a stimulant, it's a depressant, whatever that's going to be, that advanced DUI and impairment. Where the A-RIDE is a little bit intermediate in it, and those are not short trainings. And so by the time you get someone, train them all the advanced collision investigation, advanced impairment, you really get your head around what you're doing and more in depth in the laws, and to move them out is not really an efficient way to function. So, yeah.
Oh. Great. Oh, that's amazing. I mean, there's so much to try. I mean, just as a layperson, I always think, traffic officer, these gets the duty. Didn't realize there was so much training and effort put into all that stuff that gives you the skills and the ability to do that job in such a holistic and complete way. That's really, really great information.
Yeah. Well, I think too, with our specialty positions at the size department we are, and if it's traffic or whatever, there's a reason why there's a rotation. Again, he kind of hit on it. It's that, making sure it's fair. People get the opportunity to try out these positions, because really, I think it makes a huge impact on your career, and for Chase, working traffic, the next step, whatever it is, it just makes you become more of a well-rounded officer. So, I think it's awesome. We have awesome guys like Chase Goddard. Goddard,
That's
just
right.
kidding. We had to say that loud. We have officers like this that, they just make a huge impact on what they're doing daily at patrol or specialties. It's so awesome. So,
Yeah.
so I thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Very kind.
Yeah, citizens of Issaquah, thank you. I think
Well,
I think I want to get pulled over by you.
Are you sure?
No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. And I won't yell about a beat. I
Yes,
won't.
Dude, just
Better come up with
stay
another one.
in your vehicle.
I will stay
Yeah.
in my
Stay in
vehicle.
your vehicle.
I will apologize for any infraction that I did. I will turn directly into my lane. I will not
That's good. Good
I will
job.
dot all my I's and cross all my T's. Well, before we wrap up, it was a great conversation with you, Chase. I really appreciate you coming on Quah Order. Is there anything going on with you, Ryan, and coming up with PD in general over the next couple of months that you want to talk about, maybe before we head out?
Yeah, I think Salmon Days, of course, is coming
Yep.
up. First weekend of October. That's our big event. It's the 50th anniversary. So
Wow.
I think it's always a big event. I think it's the largest, festival in Washington.
Yeah, it's one of
So
them.
for us as PD, everyone basically works that weekend, and some.
How many
some
have you done,
fashion-
Chase?
Oh, I think this is my fourth, the way that my years fall.
Okay.
Yeah. So everyone's
They're fun.
some of the new officers haven't experienced very few.
Yeah.
But it's all hands on deck festival. So that's coming up. We should have the National Coffee with the Cop at the beginning of October as well.
Okay.
To be determined where exactly, but that's I think October 2nd is the national day.
Okay. That's a
and
busy week
then-
for you.
Yeah, it always ends up. So and then Parent Project starts October 10th.
Oh, that's right.
So my next class is October 10th. So
Okay.
which all right at the beginning of October.
That's right. And if you're interested about Parent Project, our previous podcast, we talked about Parent Project in depth.
Yep.
So you can check that out with the previous one.
Yep.
Well, Chase, once again, thank you very much for joining us on Quah Order.
Thank you for having
Ryan,
me.
it's always a pleasure.
You too, Tim. And
All
thank
right.
you, Chase. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next time.
See you later.